So today we're going to try to model a character, and this isn't the only way you can model a character, but it's the way that will probably teach you the most possible ways to model a character. So the first thing we wanted to do was create a polygon primitive cube, scale it up big because we're going to be doing some sculpting on it, and you go up to the right corner of the Maya interface and select the modeling toolkit. With your cube selected, click on smooth, and we'll leave the divisions at 2 because right now we're just going to make a base mesh to work from. Hit Q on the keyboard to deselect. Select object mode by right mouse clicking, click on your object. W on the keyboard to move the object up, and this will be the base for our head. What we're going to want to do is create a neck, and here, let me show you the character that I'm modeling. So we're going to go create a plane. In the create menu, click on plane, scale that up. And now it's set at a bunch of different polygons. That's fine. We don't need to worry about that for just setting up a view plane. Right mouse click on the plane, select material attributes, and in your attribute editor tab on the right, move over to the Lambert 1. What we'll do is we'll apply a new material. Assign new material by right mouse clicking on the actual object, and we will make it a Lambert, but I didn't want to overwrite the default Lambert material because otherwise it would show up on the object as well. So in the material attribute editor, right click or click on the color tab right here where the checkerboard box is, and then select file because we're going to apply an image map as the color. Right click, and in my case I have it located on my D drive. And this will be the Igor image that's up in our class folder. Igor, this one. If I go to 6, there he is. Now I want to scale this so I can see it as a reference. Then I'm going to rotate by clicking R. Scale was, or R is scale, E is rotate. In the channel editor, you'll see where I've rotated on the X. Just set that to 90. And then you can click on W on the keyboard and shift it back in space so we can just use it as sort of have it in the top corner here. And I'm also going to duplicate that by Control D, and then I'm going to rotate it on the Y. We'll set that at 90 as well. Shift that over to the left. And basically we're just going to create a little wall for modeling against. It's just going to be a reference. We're not going to use it like we did in class where we actually centered it and used it as a solid reference. I just want to be able to see it so I can model loosely. I don't want it to be in the way. Select both of those, and then under mesh just select combine. Could have done that under the toolbox as well, right here. And then just scale it up. You can also, under modify, center the pivot, which is this where this is located. If we center the pivot on the object, it's going to move it up so that it's in the center of the area that we're working with. And all I'm trying to do is just make this so that it's there as a reference for me to model against. Okay. Let's move the head up a little bit. Let's make these guys a little bit bigger. There we go. Alright, we'll go ahead and lock these down so we don't accidentally select them. So on the right of the interface in the channel box layer editor, we'll have the objects selected that we want to add to a layer. Click on layers and create layer from selected. Now that's layer 1. We'll go ahead and click on the rightmost checkbox so that it becomes a reference layer, so that when I click on it I can't select it now, but I can still select our object in the center. We'll go ahead and take that object and add that to another layer, create layer from selected by selecting it in the window, and then say create layer from selected and the layers pull down. And I got that by clicking on it. Alright, so now, yeah, that's in that layer 2 editor. We'll go ahead and call this one, double click on it and call it reference. And then we'll call this one Igor. Okay, now we should have something to work with. So Igor's got this kind of hunchback. And the z-axis is going to be facing forward, so this is where his face will be. And then that'll be the side view. So we're going to select these faces. Usually the neck would come from here, but since he's sort of hunched back, we're going to go ahead and model him with the hunch in his back. And we'll extrude this as a neck. So go back to your modeling toolkit on the right. With those faces, which I right mouse clicked and select by face. When you do this in the window, make sure you don't accidentally select some faces somewhere else, because you can not notice that and then keep working and end up having to go backwards and lose a lot of work. So hit extrude in the toolkit. That's going to allow you to extrude. Now, when I just selected the widget that it provided, it's basically extruding, I don't know if you can see this, but the line is faced off of the angle of that polygon. Since it was a sphere, it's going to come out at an angle, so it's going to basically extrude every one of these faces outward at an angle, which makes the net get a little thicker. In this case, that's probably okay. If you want to just extrude it straight, let me undo this. If you just click R on the keyboard, or W, then when you pull that face out, it's going to come out straight. And that's probably good enough for now. So let's give him a shorter neck, since his hunch is going to be in the way. We'll do another extrude. One way to repeat a function that has been done is by hitting G on the keyboard. So you see how it popped up extrude again. It only works for the last function that you did. We're going to go ahead and select W and then move that out as well. So what we're going to do for his neck, select all these faces, is scale that a little bit bigger. So you see where he's going to have sort of this neck that goes. In fact, it's probably actually going to kind of sink into his shoulders. So it's okay in this case that the neck's it's gonna create like an inverse face, and if you pull it past, you're gonna see where the polygons collide. That's okay, because we're gonna extrude and kind of curve back around. So if I do another G, since my last function was an extrude, on the keyboard, and click W and pull that out, you can see that Actually, I lost that face. We'll fix that in a second, but the way I'd moved it forward, but I'm just going to make his neck bigger. So what we can do is start to work on just edge modeling this hump to make it a little bit more rounded, because we don't want to have these square edges. So if you just right click on the while the object's selected and select vertex, we can select the vertexes in the back of the hump and then move them forward. Probably can do the same here. We could do edge selection and select both of these lines and pull the hump right up to the back of his head. Something like that. Same thing on both these faces. And if I only want to work on one side and keep it symmetrical, I can pull up in the right, I can click on the tool options, which right now I'm working with the move tool, and I can click on my symmetry settings and just set object X. You can also select right here in symmetry in the modeling toolkit for that as well. So now when I select an object, it's going to select the opposite side as well. Kind of helps. You have less selection to do and can help in terms of so when I select that side, you see how it selects the other. I can pull that out and round it out. Same thing here on the back of the neck, just to make him look to have a rounder neck instead of that square that we had at first. Can pull this forward a little bit. So this is going to be sort of his shoulder blade area. Let's go ahead and pull the sides out to round it more. Bring them forward. Alright, so now you can do a vertex selection on the back up here again for the hump. Let's see how he looks. His hump's kind of off to the side if you look at it from, well, maybe not. Okay, it'll come out the back, but we can always shift that later on the model if we wanted to make it sort of a one-sided thing. We'll leave that for now. We can always add more edges again later. And we'll pull his shoulders back because he's leaning back a little bit. That's pretty good. While we're at it, let's go ahead and pull his chin down a little. You can see how he's got this chin that kind of, his face is, he's got an overbite obviously, but the chin's not going to be perfectly round. It's going to come down here a little bit for that. We'll leave that for now. Let's go ahead and pull the forehead in, take these three. Again, I've got the symmetry on, so I could just do that, but then I'm going to have to center click on this front face just to pull that in. Let's call this is his eyes, so we'll pull those in more. Right, so, and pull his ears back. Something like that. It's very, very rough, but let's go ahead and pull his eyebrow up a little bit and take these down. Pull his eyes in a little. Same thing here. Something like that. And we'll make this his nose. Pull it up and then out. Pull that in a little bit so he's got some cheeks. Move them up a little. Higher cheekbones. We can always fix this later. We're just basically creating a really rough mesh, base mesh right now, so that we can smooth it out and create a base geometry. And then if we have to do any retopology later, we can work on that as well. Okay, we'll go ahead and select, right mouse click, select the edge, and click on this edge loop, and then this one, and this one. So we have a complete selection around the edge. Actually, let's do the faces, sorry. Just those faces. And we'll do another extrude. Click on the keyboard, R, and you can see where it's centered in the object. Is it? Nope. Oh, because I have symmetry on, pardon. Turn off symmetry, R again, now you see it's centered in the object, right? So when symmetry is turned on, even though it looks like all of these are selected, I've really only selected these two, so when I did R, it only had a reference to the left side, and that's why it wasn't centered in the object. So now when we take this and extrude it, and we can hit W on the keyboard, and then take it straight down and start to have the hump. Yeah, this is looking pretty good. We're going to do that G again. Whoops, accidentally deselected, I just undid. So let's do, I thought I had G, but I guess I've done some, because I turned off symmetry, that was my last command. So go ahead and hit extrude in the, with the faces selected, hit extrude in your modeling toolkit. W again on the keyboard. What we're doing is we're just going to create his base body form here down to his legs. Alright, so now we got to do a little bit of movement on these edges. We can turn symmetry back on to make it easier. Object X. And we'll pull this out. This one too. Let's go ahead and pull it down some. This one can come forward because his body kind of curves out. Move this one up, this one up. What we're trying to do is get sort of everything in line for the front side here, so that eventually this edge loop that's going around his body is going to be sort of horizontal at the stripes, and you can see it. It's going to be something like these stripes on the back of the shirt. We'll leave them straight on. He does curve out a little bit. Yeah, it's looking good. Alright, select the faces again and extrude. W again, because I've got my symmetry turned on, you see it's not centered when I hit W, so I can turn off the symmetry and it'll snap to the center. I can pull down, and in this case I'm just going to hit R and extrude, just sort of scale it on the vertical a little bit to trying to get this more flat plane. Move it forward a little. Okay, that's starting to look pretty good. Yeah, you can. Okay, then do G again. Because I turned off symmetry again, I lost my last command. So hit extrude, W, pull down. We'll scale it on the Y a little bit, trying to get it again to eventually get flat at the base of the shirt. And then do one more G, W, scale it again. Now we're starting to get there. Pull it up a little bit. And we'll shape things here in a little bit, but for now this is looking pretty good. Let me go ahead and grab this middle vertex here and shift it forward. Alright, do one more. Let's right mouse click, select object mode. We're going to move the entire object up because we want his feet to be at the grid here. He's going to be too short if I keep him at that height. Okay, so now face, face, face on the bottom, or we could turn on symmetry and just click on the right side. We're going to do another extrude. This may be the last one for the shirt. Yeah. Looks good. Let's pull this face forward, this edge forward here. He's got a bit of a belly. Something like that. Turn on symmetry, X symmetry. pull these fronts back to give it more of a rounded edge. And we can pull the back in. Leave the hump kind of big at the top. Alright, select some more faces. We'll turn off symmetry, select some more faces on the bottom, and now we're going to do one more extrusion on the edge here of the shirt. W to pull it down. Then we'll do another extrusion and hit R on the keyboard and scale that in because we want this shirt to have a bit of an edge at the base. Let's see, not too thick. We don't want to add too much geometry, just pull it up, scale it in some more. So that's going to be the edge of the shirt, and then we're going to have his shorts. If you see where his shorts are inside, we'll have those come out from the body. Let's make sure we're not going through anything here. Oops. Scale that in a little bit more. Yeah, that'll be okay. So then G to extrude again and pull, and this is where his hips go. So we'll scale this. So it looks, so basically this edge that's going around the body here, this is his shirt and this will be his shorts. We're just going to make it like a little, because it's going to be hidden most of the time anyway. We can always pull this edge up more so that it creates more of a shirt, but then you might end up with like polygons going through. If I select this, see how it goes through the edge here, so we'll work on that. We'll figure it out as we go, but for now as a base mesh this is enough. Select the faces again, hit extrude by G or clicking over here in the toolbox, and then pull. So this will be, his legs are up high, and that'll be his hips. Now what we can do to create the individual legs is just select two of these faces on one side and hit extrude, and then hit extrude, select R on the keyboard, and then just scale the legs in a little bit. So that'll set, and then the same thing for the other side. Scale the legs. It's not going to be perfect, but we're probably going to end up reworking the topology anyway. Now we can select both of these and pull them down. And then we'll do another extrude. Something like that. It's starting to look pretty good. We'll shift them back. Take these two edges here and shift those in. And then do the same thing that we did with the shirt, where we're going to scale. I'm going to do extrude, and then we'll scale. I didn't hit anything on the keyboard. I'm just using the actual widgets to scale each one individually, just to kind of close, create a gap in the shorts. We can pull that up probably pretty good ways, or actually just create a little loop here and then do another extrude to create sort of a thicker short, and then scale that in. Actually undo, sorry. Let's get back to where we extruded the first time. Okay, Z. Okay, so now I'm at this point where we've created that. Let's hit extrude, scale them, extrude again. Do not click on the keyboard, just use this Z tool to move it up. And then that way, when you pull it up inside the leg, the pants leg, we can still scale them inward a little bit to create kind of a flare so that there won't be any collision with the outside of the shorts or the pants. Let's see. He's got some really thin legs, but they do get thicker at the shorts. So I can pull this up a little bit more. We'll go ahead and grab these vertices and scale those, trying to get his legs just a little bit smaller and a little bit more round. At the thickness of the thigh. Same thing on this side. Again, these aren't going to line up, but we're going to probably delete 1/2 and create a symmetrical version after we've agreed on what the topology should look like. Alright, so let's select these faces in his legs, and this is where the legs will start. So they're going to get thin pretty quick. Hit extrude. Don't click a keyboard to center the selection, just pull them down, and we're going to make them taper. So that's like the top of his thighs. And then we'll make his knees, we'll take it next part to his knees, do a G again to extrude again. Thinner, there's his top of his knees, just below the shorts. Let's pull it up. Then another G again, and he's got kind of a knobby knee. We can work on that in a second, but we'll just pull it down. We're going to go ahead and make these joints have like three edges for the joints, just so that we know where his knee starts. Another extrusion, that's why I'm going thinner right here at the kneecap. So you get this sort of, because his lower legs are really thin. And do another extrude. I'm going to make that, undo. I did not want to click on the keyboard. Let's make sure. Yeah. Okay, so I've got that. Undo, undo. Alright. Let's do redo, sorry. So I went one too far. I want that taper, but now I'm still just have that selected, not an extruded face. Hit extrusion, pull that down, and then without clicking on the keyboard, go ahead and scale these in a pretty good bit. And that'll be to the top of his socks. Let's see. Undo, accidentally deselected. Yeah, something like that. We're going to keep his legs straight. They're kind of bent here. We may end up fixing that later, but we'll go ahead and just keep them straight so that when we rig them, it won't be as big a deal. And it may map in Unity to animations better. Alright, so we're going to leave a line here for his sock. There's a little bit of a gap and his socks come at different angles. We can fix that later. So another extrusion. Go ahead and take that down to the ankle. Scale it. Each one individually, not with the... Alright. And then the top of his shoe. Do another extrusion. Pull it down. This is where we're going to have to start editing by line again. So we may want to turn on, using the tool settings, movement tool. Let's go ahead and turn on symmetry on the X again. Select, and we're going to pull up the top of the ankle and pull it forward a little bit, and then pull down the back of the ankle and out a little bit, because you can see where his feet kind of round, or his back of his feet kick out. Alright, and then we'll go a little wide on the, select by vertex, a little wide at the ankle. So here, Just kind of make his feet bigger. Then we can select faces again and hit extrude. We're just going to pull it out. Maybe scale it on the, what is that? The Y? Yeah, scale on the Y. We'll fix it again in a sec. That's pretty good. Select by edge and just click on this top face again because we're going to pull it back to his ankle. Make it the top of his shoe. Take that one down a little bit. We can do the vertices, make the shoe a foot wider again. Actually, we can make the back of the shoe a lot wider too. Something like that. Maybe make this one go wide. Okay. Then we can just select these faces again and pull the shoes forward. Hit extrude. Now we will set it so that we can click on W on the keyboard. We can leave symmetry turned on because we don't really care if it's in center or on the side here. Pull that forward and then select R on the keyboard and just scale it. Scale it on the vertical. Pull it flat. Scale it wide. And because we're working with symmetry on, it'll keep the individual controls even though we've used the keyboard to select and try to center it. But it's centered in here, so it's going to scale relative to that center. So you see how they're symmetrical. Otherwise, if I had scaled it from here, then it would scale the feet and make them skewed. Alright, so let's select by vertex. Make it the foot have a base. Sorry. Select by vertex, W. Move that in. Same here. Yeah, it's looking good. And select by face, right mouse click. Do another extrude. Pull it forward. Probably one more. Another extrude. Pull it forward. And this one we can taper a little bit for the end of the foot. Yeah, looks good. Select edge and we'll round off the top of the foot. Something like that. Maybe make this one forward and pull this a little bit so it kind of goes out. Looks pretty good. Could be bigger. We can, yeah, definitely needs to be bigger. So select something like, yeah, let's see, we'll scale. Just to kind of get the size right. Bigger. Pull it up, forward. Yeah, let's see. It's looking good. And maybe a little bit down. Okay. Select the entire object now, and let's move him, center him in the screen here from his feet. Make sure he's on the ground. Okay. Now, let's move him back a little bit. Okay. It's not too bad. We can work with that. Let's get his arms. So if you look at the reference image, his arms are all forward and pointing. That's a posed look. We're going to make him T-posed, so we're going to take the arms out to the sides. So what we need to do is figure out where his arms come from. They're pretty low and forward on the hump and the shoulder. You can see right here, it's almost like a T-Rex. So we're going to use, normally we might use these faces as an extrusion start for his arm, but in this particular case, let me think about this. It's probably going to be better if we use these two faces as an extrusion start, since he's got such forward-facing arms. So in order to do that, we need to turn off symmetry again, because here's the reason that we have to turn off symmetry. If we have this selected like this, because we've selected both sides, if we do an extrude from that and move it, it's a solid object, right? Undo. So we don't want to do a solid object, because we're going to do the same thing we did with his legs, where we just want to extrude one side first and just extrude it inwards in order to create better geometry. So turn off symmetry. Just select these four, make sure there's nothing else selected on the body, and then do an extrude. Just click R on the keyboard so that it's centered, and we're going to pull it in to create the foundation for his shoulder. Pull it out a little bit. This is going to need a little retopo here, because we've got like a lot of things going on because of the shape that we extruded it from. So pull that out. Yeah, it's looking okay. And then just by point, let's round it out to his shoulder. For his arm. Okay. Let's see. Pull this back a little bit. This is where it gets a little tricky in terms of knowing. You have to kind of predict what you're going to try to do with the shape in terms of rigging and animation. So we don't want to have a bunch of like creases here on the front of his body, even though it sort of makes sense for the reference that we're working from, because his arm still needs to kind of come out of the back of the side of his body like a normal arm would, in order for the animation that we're going to apply later in a game in Unity to map correctly. Not 100%, because we'll have to do some constraint work, but close enough. So this is where we have to kind of like change the topology just a little bit from what we had. Pull this back. Okay, that's looking okay as a start for his shoulder. Yeah. Alright, so that means his arm will come out from here. Yeah. Okay, let's try that. So what we can do now to avoid having to go and hand make this, and since we've got some odd symmetry where we've tweaked things individually on the side, just go and select the right side of his body, all the faces. Make sure you've got everything. And hit delete, which leaves half of it, right? So now what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and model his arm, and we'll get that in position, and then when we're done we're going to just flip and weld. We're going to do this function under mesh where we mirror the geometry, and it'll mirror it across the axis, and it should be symmetrical then. So for now we're going to select, let's go ahead and pull his shoulder back a little bit. These are just decisions you have to kind of make, and it's better to make them now if you can think about it that way ahead of time. I know it's hard because you're not familiar with what you're going to need to do going forward, but the idea is that if he's got this arm coming so much off the front of his shoulder, in terms of rigging wise, when we go to apply human animation to that, things like an arm out to the side is going to make his arm come forward, so it's not going to be quite right. So we need to get this thing sort of out to the side, and then we'll create a modifier that will bring it forward in animation, not in the rig. The same reason we don't want to model his neck too far forward if we can avoid it too. Even though in this case we have. We're going to see how that works out. We'll get an example of both when we go to apply animations to it in Unity. We're going to be able to see pretty easily whether or not which one works the best. Okay, pull that forward. So now he's starting to get sort of a shoulder on the side. There's some weirdness going on here. Go ahead and pull that in. There. Yeah, it looks good. Go ahead and pull this in. It's got a belly. If we needed to add more geometry, we could add it here, but we can always do it after the fact too. Okay, let's see. It's looking pretty good. Yeah, we'll do more later. Okay, so let's go ahead and take his arm out. So do an extrude and click W because we're going to take it out to the side just a little bit, because again at the joints we want to keep at least like 3 rings of geometry because we need more geometry at the joints that are going to animate and bend, because the deformation. So if I ended up like rotating this as a joint would, you see what happens, it starts to tear at the edges. So what we create more geometry at the points that actually bend so much, like his elbows, his fingers, his wrists, shoulders, knees, hips, just a little bit more in order to create geometry that will deform better. Let's go ahead and like flatten this a little bit on the X, not too much. Yeah, still needs to stick out. Do another extrude and pull that out, or scale it in. So he's got these sleeves on that need to kind of flare out, so maybe we'll select this edge loop, which we can do because it was an extrusion, so you can get it all the way around. We're going to scale that bigger than this one too. Can't do it on the end because it doesn't connect. Yeah, something like that. And then do another extrusion. Move that out. Ah, I did the edge. So I had the edges selected. So I created essentially an edge loop, the same as if I had done the geometry, but that's okay. I can just pull these faces out. And, oh, actually I can't, because I extruded off of the a contiguous edge. I got these null faces. They don't have any geometry, any space in between this face. See how it's all inverted? It's just a single polygon loop. So bad. That's not good. Undo. Make sure that, yeah, okay, we've just got the edges. There's no extrusion there. Select the faces and extrude. We can flatten it a little bit on the X, make it bigger, pull it down, something like that. Yeah. One more. Flatten it. Scale it. So I'm sort of creating like this gravity that's going to make the sleeve low, like hanging. Something like that. And put in. Okay. And back a little. Alright, that's Select the faces on the end again and do one more extrude. And pull it out just a little. Get a little scale in the middle. Flatten it on the X. That'll be the end of the sleeve. And then do another extrude and then just scale this one in because that's where his arm's going to be. Do another extrude and then pull back and scale into the sleeve so that we create that edge for his arm to come out of. And it should go up higher. Oops. Something like that. Yeah. Okay. And then extrude, pull his arm out, taper it by scaling. Whoops, actually did a G there. That's alright, that'll be the elbow joint. We can select this edge loop just by double clicking and scale that in. Let's go ahead and round out his arm now before we get too far down because we want it to be round. It's also very far forward. So the idea is I'm trying to get this sort of as an X-shaped, this little end cap here, make it pretty X-shaped so that I know the arm is rounded out. Which means these top and bottom vertices will be, in line with the center, and then this should end up creating sort of a crossbar. And the same thing here. Make sure that these are in line. Same thing. Alright, let's see. You can see how it sort of edges down here in the middle. Let's move that up. Yep. And this is all kind of taut. Doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to definitely retopologize as I look at this. We're just going to use this as the base shape because we've got so much twist going on because of the way this shoulder is constructed. That's okay. And down. Something like that. Pull that back. Trying to get the sleeve to sort of follow what the arm should, the arm that should be under it. There's no reason for it to stick out where there's or be floppy where there's not really a reason for it to be that way. So you can see here I've got this sort of point that's behind or caved in where it should be caved out, or concave versus Alright, that's pretty straight coming off the side. Straight enough. And there's his arm. This little ring inside the sleeve needs to be fixed. Yep. Something like that, just to make sure it's straight and not too twisted. Same thing on this. Okay. Pull that one in a little. So now you can see where his arm goes in, but it doesn't match up with points on the torso. So what we want to do is help that out. Probably pull this down and in a little just to help it. Yeah, it's good. Okay. And then I can select this edge loop, double click, and just shift it up a little bit and back. So it looks like it goes straight into the arm a little bit more. Okay. Now we can continue extruding the arm out. Make sure we don't have any extra faces selected. Okay, hit extrude. Pull it out. Scale it in a little bit. Extrude. Pull it out. Taper it by scaling. That'll be his forearm. Yep. And then another extrude out to his wrist. So he's got these long, skinny arms. So they do seem to be symmetrical in proportion. So the length from shoulder to here should be the same to the wrist. Extrude again. And this will be where the wrist is. We're going to make it just sort of knobbier, bigger. Do another, extrude it down, scale, whoops. Pull that out, that'll be his hand. Let's go ahead and select this edge loop. Scale that. So he's got these long hands. Probably flat too, so select this face. Something like that. Actually, we can do that on this edge loop too at his wrist, because the forearm does sort of become flat. Oops. Double click on the edge loop. Becomes flat over the shape. Starts round and becomes flat horizontally at the wrist. Something like that. So we've got like a knob at the edge, but it's sort of flat here. But maybe a little bit more knobby. Alright, select these faces. We're almost there. And extrude one more time. This will be where his thumb comes out. And then we'll do one more. And that'll be where his fingers come out. Alright, so let's see. Maybe pull this edge loop back a little bit. Click. This one. So his thumb's going to come out like here. We'll do a extrude. And pull it out. It's only a box right now. Probably could have more geometry, but they're so thin and skinny. We're going to leave it like this for now, because if we don't have to add the geometry, then it's fine. As long as you can see the edge. I kind of rotated it there because I wanted to kind of face forward as a thumb would, and pull it down, because thumbs tend to not come straight out of the hand. Alright. Pull this face a little bit, make it wider for the hand, and pull this face up to flatten the hand, and then this edge or edges here can come out. Same thing to make it flat like a palm. Alright, let's see how to take the fingers out, because we need 4 fingers and we don't really have the geometry for 4 fingers right now. So what we can do is let's get rid of these edges. Select these and then delete. We still have a face here. What I've done is I've just deleted the edges. So we're going to want to start to create some geometry that'll give me enough to pull for 4 fingers. So, and we almost have it. We just need like an extra line in here. So in the modeling toolkit, select multi-cut, and you see how it snaps to points. So we're just going to cut it to here, and then down across, and then back. Let's take it down to here, and then to here on the hand. Hit enter. So now we have that geometry. This will be pinky finger, the ring finger, middle finger, and we can come down from here and then take this, cut into that part of the hand. So now we have 4 polygons to pull from. Yeah, that looks okay. It's not going to be a big deal if we have a triangle here because it's the top of the hand and it doesn't really distort that much. We're going to create some knuckles right here that'll separate this polygon, and your top of your hand doesn't really flex or distort much. And it's okay to have polys on the top like that. In fact, we'll go ahead and, since we're working with square fingers on the other fingers, let's go ahead and close this one out. Then we'll pull, get quit, so we get out of the multi-cut tool, select by vertex, and just pull this back to create oops, I accidentally selected his body down there. Pull that wide. In fact, we can get rid of this edge and then just select this vertex and delete it, and then we end up with the we can still have a square up here, but we're going to start to kind of round the hand out flat. So that'll be his pinky finger, which will be smaller. There. So really, this should come out more because these are the fatter fingers. And this should be straight. Just select by edge and move this that way. That way. Alright. So now let's go ahead and extrude his fingers out. So, a quick easy way to do this, I haven't showed you this, but there's a way to extrude without, so that the faces aren't connected when you do the extrusion. The trick is to, and they've moved this around so it's hard for me to find. I don't know what that is, but it'll have to do with usually it used to be up here in the mesh tools, and it was just an option to when you extrude it would keep the edges together. It may be in the toolkit for let's do a face. If we do this, symmetry, soft selection, common selection options. Preserve UVs, tweak mode, nope. Nope. Alright, so anyway, we want to go ahead and create these knuckles solid, so let's go ahead and do the extrude. Pull that out. It's interesting that they haven't added that to this toolkit, because that would be a useful thing. So as it is, we're going to have to extrude each one of these individually. So extrude, just go ahead and scale it and pull that out as a finger joint. Extrude, scale, pull it out. Extrude, scale, pull it out. Extrude, scale, and pull it out. Alright, so now we have individual fingers. Go ahead and select the finger faces. Go ahead and hit extrude and pull those out. We'll go and individually taper them scale wise so they get thin. And this will be the first joint. He's got really long fingers. So we'll do the first joint. It'll be just a single joint there. And then the next bone finger, we can go ahead and make it. And we'll leave them, scale them down. No, because I unselected. Create another joint. And then the end of the finger. Something like that. It's pretty long. It looks good. And if you want, you could rotate. Since the top of the finger, tips of fingers goes forward more than the bottom. Something like that. Looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and select all of these vertices and pull them up a little. Something like that. It's looking pretty good. Now we got to finish out his thumb. So go ahead and scale this in, and then we'll do a let's rotate it from the bottom so that it faces forward just a little bit more, like that. Pull it in towards the hand a little more, scale it. Alright, then we'll put a joint here. We're going to do another extrude. Shift on the keyboard, click W, because we're just going to pull it forward here. Scale it a little bit. And then another. Go ahead and pull that one out. The thumb only has two joints. There's one right here, which we can add with the extra geometry here in a little bit, but just want to make sure I get it to the right length. Actually, if we click this, double click this edge and then rotate that back, we can pull that down and make it part of the joint. Something like that, which will work better. And then this one, we can under Mesh Tools, insert Edge Loop. We'll just click right here and insert that joint. And click Q to get back out. Select the edge. Let's go ahead and scale it a little bit and move it. It seemed to have like some sort of a shift. Select this face, And big shift, edge. Doesn't really matter. His fingers seem to be pretty twisted, but for the purposes of doing it right, let's get them straight, and then we can twist them later. Alright, so that will be his thumb. We can work on it more later. Alright, now that we have his hand, let's make sure it's proportional, because he's got really big hands compared to his body, and we want to keep those in proportion. I can tell they're not. Well, a little bit bigger. So you can select all of these vertices from the wrist and just scale them up bigger. Something like that to pull it out. Scale his wrist a little bit smaller to make up for what we just did. Now his hand's proportional. And you know, we may want to make the fingers a little bit longer, so pull these out. Spidery fingers. Alright. Looks good. And there's our base mesh, at least a side of it. Select the object, and now that we have everything where we want it, as much as we can, let's go under Mesh and Mirror Geometry, and don't just click on it because it may not be set to mirror on the right axis. Select the little square to the right of it, let off there. And what you're going to get is mirror on which axis, so mirror direction. And in this case, we've got it set for -x, which is right, because -x is to the left. We want to merge with the original, and we want to merge the vertices. And as long as these the points that are in the center of the object are on the 0 axis and haven't been moved off of it, they should merge. If they haven't, we can always merge them after the fact, but I don't think we've done anything that should have taken them out of alignment. So go ahead and mirror, and you see where we get our body now. And hit Q, and it looks like everything's connected. And there's our base mesh for Igor. We'll do another video, and we will deal with how to go and get him more organic and to make him look basically exactly like what we see in our reference. But for now, this will get us there. All right.